Well, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Ether Tale Radio Theater. But you know what? It's National Poetry Month. So today, no bells, no whistles, just great poetry. And in the public domain, which generally means, that the poet's been dead for more than 70 plus years. But we've added even extra years to that just to be very, very careful. We're very excited to celebrate National Poetry Month. I'm doing a little display at Geisel Library at UC San Diego, mostly to call attention to a poetry slam reading that's going to happen on that campus, UC San Diego, at the bookstore, the UC San Diego bookstore, at their coffee shop, Perks, near their little fireplace. And that's, as I recall, on September 25th, from 5 to 6 p.m. And we'll remind you more of that and hope to see you there. We're all going to try to go. We'll see. I know, Melanie, that you were going to ask me, what is National Poetry Month? I can read your mind. National Poetry Month, apparently it's the largest literary celebration in the world. Really?
Really?
Yeah, with tens of millions of readers, students, K through 12 teachers, librarians, booksellers. There are literary event curators, publishers, bloggers, and of course, actual poets, marking poetry's important place in our culture and our lives. And why April? Well, it's a great month because of the school still in session, and apparently they felt it was a slow month for marking other, they looked at it. Apparently it was a slow month.
Also, I think Shakespeare's birthday.
Oh, brilliant.
Probably slightly related.
Perhaps, except this is a very American group, the Academy of American Poets. But I think that makes sense, that at some level they knew they had to throw some respect to Shakespeare.
Of course, I hope his birthday is in April. Somebody please look that up.
Okay, well that's okay. You're going to do such a good job of reading your poems that you get a free and clear get out of jail card. They won't. There are apparently, when the American Academy of Poets set this up, they had certain goals in mind. They wanted to highlight the extraordinary legacy and ongoing achievement of American poets and encourage the reading of poems and assist teachers in bringing poetry into their classrooms and increase the attendance paid to poetry by national and local media, because poets don't necessarily make a great living in this country. And this group wanted to encourage increased publication and distribution of poetry, and above all, encourage support for poets and poetry. And this group, they actually claimed that they were the first to give a cash award for poetry to something, for poetry to someone in this country, and this was like in the around 1936 or so, which is really a shock. Are you sure someone didn't get a cash prize? But I think you could get published somewhere in a magazine. But this group claims that they were the first to award a cash prize, which I'm going to give them a call on the phone and say, are you serious? Because that just breaks my heart. I remember once jokingly I told my colleague Christina Continelli, she helped me move into a new apartment, and I said, I helped her move into a new apartment, and she offered to pay me, and I said, oh no, why don't you write me a poem? And she thought I was kidding, but I wasn't. I needed a poem. And it's been fun to have a small role encouraging poetry. What I've been doing to encourage poetry at my day job at UC San Diego Library is I often do exhibits that have a theme, and I'll pick a case, and I'll put all these objects in it, and then we'll commission a poet to write a poem based on the items that are in that case.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and Christina wrote a great one. It was for a raven exhibit that I was doing to celebrate our pair of ravens at the library that breed and have a lovely nest near our fourth floor. of
You
Guys
asked
Library.
her to write a poem about it. No pressure.
No
about a raven.
pressure. I know. Yeah, I know. Like it's never been done
there,
before. Like it's never been.
I feel like maybe I've heard one.
Yes. Well, in fact, I read that poem last year, and I
Right.
should have read it tonight because I got such a great sore throat that I sound much better tonight on that.
Did her poem end Nevermore?
No, it did not. But it was so good that I had trouble finding other people willing to participate in the same
Because of
month
that.
because it was just so good.
Yeah.
But through that exhibit procedure, we've commissioned about 4 or 5 poems, and it's been great fun. And we've also just made sure that there were some refrigerator magnet poem, games there for passers-by to do poems too, and that it's actually exciting, and sometimes they turn out very well. In fact, Peter, I handed you some high cubes. Do you know what I mean, Jelly Bean? Cubes that have appropriate words that you can use to make a haiku. And did you make one, Peter? Did you do?
I am prepared.
Oh, are you willing to read it into the microphone?
I would love to
Well,
read
here's a brand new poem from Peter Flynn using trademark patent set of high cubes. These delightful cubes that have words written on every side. Okay, Peter, we're ready to listen.
Science piece. Feeling they trouble. Blocks we please overlook in fortune. Wrong ritual with fire dead.
Heavy. I feel like doing beatnik snaps to that. That's for sure. Amazing.
These were pseudo-randomly selected. I did search for really juicy words that I can't say over the radio and couldn't find any.
No, because this is an honest one. I do have the obscene refrigerator magnet poetry game, but I did not bring
Don't
that
we
in here
all?
because I did not trust any of you.
That's a good call.
But those will be in one of the exhibit cases at the library, and
Nice.
and locked. So I won't be able to use that one. Thank you, Peter. That was brilliant. I appreciate that. Well, hopefully, maybe on the 4th Thursday, maybe you can bring one of your children over, and and maybe they can do the same.
I think one of them would really enjoy that.
And I bet it would be Daniel.
Indeed.
Excellent. So we look forward to that. And that 4th Thursday, that's his turn to come to the radio station, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So maybe my wish will be granted. Well, now it's probably time for poetry chosen by, either Melanie or Gabriel. Let's go for Gabriel. Gabe, what did you bring for some poems today in the public domain that you were interested in reading on the station today?
Well, I have a couple here that kind of really stuck out with me, because the last time you and I sat down and read poetry, you had this great theme about poetry from song, poetry that came out of songs or was turned into song.
Yes,
And
I stumbled across because they were part of some sort of concert that I happened to be in. And I'm not a poetry person until I found out that maybe I was, because this poem would be part of a piece that we played, and it was like, wow.
Yeah, so many people don't know they've been exposed to poetry. So one of the things that I stumbled upon was the idea that a lot of us are exposed to more poetry than we know through things like film. There are lots of poems that come through film that we'd never heard of or never seen before. Sometimes this is a person's first exposure to it. And my first poem was "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman. It was featured in the movie Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams. Wonderful poem. But again, this is one of those that people don't necessarily get exposure to immediately, which is one of the reasons why I chose it. But this is "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman. Oh Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack, the prize we sought is won. The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting. While follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But oh heart, 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 oh the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen, cold and dead. Oh Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills, for you the bouquets and ribboned wreaths, for you the shores are crowding. For you they call the swaying mass, their eager faces turning. Here, Captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head, it is some dream that on the deck you've fallen, cold and dead. My Captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm. He has no pulse or will. The ship is anchored safe and sound, its voyage closed and done. From fearful trip the victor ship comes in with object won. Exult, O shores, and ring, O bells. But I, with mournful tread, walk the deck my captain lies, fallen, cold and dead. So that was something that was kind of inspired through the film of Dead Poets Society. A wonderful analogy if you follow along the film, if you've ever seen it before. But again, a lot of people will never have known about Walt Whitman except for that one moment. So I kind of like to go ahead and see how many people just get drawn into poetry from different directions.
Yes, and that'll be a theme that we look for this month. We'll all get our heads together to make sure you have more, hey, I heard this in a film. And I've got more of the, hey, I heard this at a concert. And we'll explore more of those, especially on the fourth Thursday of this month. I look forward to that. And you have other items with you, Gabe.
Yes, I do. I would definitely enjoy going ahead and reading them, but do we want to go ahead and have Melanie go ahead and read one of hers?
Sure.
Hi.
That's great.
Okay, so I just was looking around for poems that I remembered studying in college. I'm sure, like most people out there, I studied most of my poetry in school. Once out of school, you kind of let that fall away.
Yeah. Somehow that's not a high priority in our country and in our culture. But maybe this Academy of American Poets, who did indeed found National Poetry Month, maybe they can change that for us.
Well, and some of my favorite poetry is still very much, the poets are very much alive. So like Mary Oliver, etc. I couldn't read those poems on the air. But so I was hearkening back to my time as a literary major at Sonoma State. Hi, Sonoma State. And one of the poems that I remembered loving is called Pied Beauty by Gerard Manley Hopkins. And he was one of the bigger poets of the Victorian era who, like most artists, became more famous after he died. But his poems have what's called sprung rhythm, and he was one of the inventors of this type of poetry. A lot of the stuff was in iambic.
Mm-hmm. Short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long.
And so I'm not going to say this properly, but there's something about the way that he deals with feet in his poems that have this very sprung. The rhythm is very bouncy.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear it.
And you will hear it because, here we go. It's called Pied Beauty by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of couple color as a brinded cow, for rose moles all in stipple upon trout that swim, fresh fire coal, chestnut falls, finch's wings, landscape plotted and pieced, fold, fallow, and plow, and all trades, their gear and tackle and trim. All things counter, original, spare, strange, whatever is fickle, freckled, who knows how, with swift, slow, sweet, sour, a dazzle, dim, he fathers forth whose beauty is past change. Praise him.
I could feel it.
Good.
I could feel the spring.
I also love it because glory be to God for dappled things. So anybody who's freckled or has beauty spots, quote unquote, this poem is about them.
Yes.
This is for you.
Yes. That's necessary. And again, we're celebrating National Poetry Month. And National Poetry Month was founded by the Academy of American Poets. The Academy was founded in 1934 to support American poets at all stages of their careers and to foster the appreciation of contemporary poetry. And you really should visit their website to find out more about them and what they do and the wonderful activities they sponsor. Like for this month, they have a whole bunch of public domain poems that you can print out and work with during National Poetry Month, and the poems come from their members, and I've printed them all out. I'm going to put them in the display that we're doing at the UC San Diego Library. That will be fun. And yes, Gabe was exploring the theme of poems I heard in the movies, and I'd like to read a few poems that I heard at a concert. And again, I don't think of myself as a poetry person until, certain pieces that I played or was sitting in the orchestra for, and the poetry moved me. I thought, I've never spent time with poetry, and that was a mistake. But one of my favorite pieces that I like to play is a Ralph Vaughan Williams piece for voice and oboe, and it's called 10 Blake Songs. And again, the poems from William Blake. But the poems are wonderful, and these particular poems were actually, and the music, it was commissioned for a film about the visual art of William Blake. He also was involved with etchings and visual art, and they made a wonderful film about his visual art, and they asked composer Ralph Vaughan Williams to write music for that film, and use 10 specific poems that they picked. And he said, yeah, I'll do it, but Little Lamb better not be in there because I hate that poem. And he just refused because at first glance it might kind of look kind of insipid to someone at first glance. And he just refused. And they said, well, actually it's there. And he refused, and he composed all the music, was all ready, but didn't do Little Lamb. And at the last moment, like the night before, the deadline, he just finally did it, and he was actually very, very pleased with it. So and these are short, and I'd like to read all 10 of them as a set. And the first of these 10 Blake songs, and I'm not going to be singing them, I'll just be reading them, is Infant Joy. I have no name. I am but 2 days old. What shall I call thee? I happy am. Joy is my name. Sweet joy befall thee. Pretty joy, sweet joy, but 2 days old. Sweet joy I call thee. Thou dost smile. I sing the while. Sweet joy befall thee. Next one in the set of 10, A Poison Tree. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears. And I sunned it with my smiles and with soft, deceitful wiles. And it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright. And my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning, glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree.
Ooh.
Apparently it was a poison apple.
Wow.
Let me just give it away. I'll give it away now. Uh-huh. And my favorite from this set, and these pieces were for oboe and voice, the one called The Piper, because the oboe is such a, pastoral instrument. And I've always fancied myself a shepherd from some previous decade. In fact, when I was a really, really little kid, living in Germany for a while with my family, there was a shepherd that would bring his flock of lambs through the field, and me and a little friend of mine would sometimes follow them, and he'd even go through a tiny little, well, I thought it was a river and a lake, but it's probably just the teeniest little pond. And we'd go in and get all wet, and I get home all wet, and it's like, what's this? Where were you? And by then I had forgotten. So I don't know. I'm just all wet. What can I say?
Tending my sheep.
I know. Oh, I loved, spending time with those sheep. And indeed, here is The Piper. piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, and he laughing said to me, "Pipe a song about a lamb." So I piped with merry cheer. "Piper, pipe that song again." So I piped. He wept to hear. "Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe. Sing thy songs of happy cheer." So I sang the same again, while he wept with joy to hear. "Piper, sit thee down and write in a book that all may read." So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed, and I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs. Every child may joy to hear. I love that one. Of course, I keep on moving my mouth away from the microphone to read this. I probably should put them right in front of me instead. Professional radio? No, not tonight. But true love of poetry tonight. This one is entitled to be titled London. I wandered through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe, in every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every man, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse.
So, Gabe, you're talking about knowing poems from movies.
Yeah.
When Scott was reading that poem, all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, I know this poem, and I was reciting it along with you.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, I know this poem. And I mean, if somebody said to me, "Do you know London by Blake?" I'd go, no. But as soon as you started reading it, I was like, I know every word to this poem.
Why? And why? Because you heard it in a movie, perhaps?
I've read it in a book.
Yes.
I've studied Blake. It's probably been in a movie. I've probably heard that song.
Yeah. But, well, that's why people can memorize poetry. It's written brilliantly and so structured that it actually becomes, and even though it's so complicated, it's easy to memorize because every word was the perfect word chosen. And that's why, after all these years, you still know every word of it. Oh, I should read The Lamb. This is the one that the composer Ralph Vaughan Williams did not want in the film score. But it's delightful, and here it is. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Gave thee life, and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead. Gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright. Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Little lamb, I'll tell thee. Little lamb, I'll tell thee. He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek, and he is mild. He became a little child, I a child, and thou a lamb. We are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. Now, I do want to read number 6. And this one indeed is called The Shepherd. That's probably what my speech about the shepherd should have been. Wait for this moment. How sweet is the shepherd's sweet lot. From the morn to the evening he strays. He shall follow sheep all the day, and his tongue shall be filled with praise. For he hears the lamb's innocent call, and he hears the ewes' tender reply. He is watchful while they are in peace, for they know when their shepherd is nigh. And in this set, number 7 is Ah, Sunflower, weary of time, who countest the steps of the sun, seeking after that sweet golden clime where the traveler's journey is done, where the youth pint away with desire, and the pale virgin shrouded in snow arise from their graves and aspire where my sunflower wishes to grow. And in this set, these pieces for that film about the visual arts of William Blake, the eighth in the suite is Cruelty Has a Human Heart. Cruelty has a human heart, and jealousy a human face. Terror the human form divine, and secrecy the human dress. The human dress is forged iron, the human form a fiery forge, the human face a furnace sealed. The human heart is hungry gorge. And the ninth of these 10, if you're counting, the divine image. These wonderful Blake poems. To mercy, pity, peace, and love, all pray in their distress, and to these virtues of delight return their thankfulness, for mercy, pity, peace, and love is God our Father dear, and mercy, pity, peace, and love is man, his child and care. For mercy has a human heart, pity a human face, and love the human form divine, and peace the human dress. Then every man of every clime that prays in his distress, prays to the human form divine, love, mercy, pity, peace, and all must love the human form, in heathen, Turk, or Jew, where mercy, love, and pity dwell, there God is dwelling too. And the last, in this suite, eternity. He who binds to himself a joy doth a winged life destroy, but he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. The look of love alarms, because it's filled with fire, but the look of soft deceit shall win the lover's hire. Soft deceit and idleness, these are beauty's sweetest dress. So sometime Ellen and I should perform these, I mean, we have in previous decades performed these pieces for oboe and voice. And, oh, God, I always love doing these because the poems are so wonderful. And, again, I have to admit I never would have spent time with these poems except they were a piece of music that I was involved with. And I had heard "Oh Captain, My Captain" once before I saw that movie from a friend. We were at a bookstore, and she opened a book and said, this is my favorite poem. And then, yes, I was also delighted to hear it in that movie. But I'm sure a lot of people heard "Oh Captain, My Captain"
sure.
the first time because of that movie. And that really inspired a lot of love of poetry.
Absolutely. Is there any place possibly online that you actually know of that you can actually hear the poems that you just read put to the music?
Oh, yeah, just go to YouTube.
Okay.
One of these days they'll shut it all down. But yeah, you can go to YouTube. Or maybe Ellen and I will announce a time that we'll perform them.
There you go.
Keep your ears open. Miss Melanie, do you have an additional poem for us?
I do. And speaking of music, and I will sheepishly admit this.
Little Lamb Sheepishly?
Little Lamb Sheepishly. The second poem that I chose is by John Keats. And one of the reasons I chose it, there is a lovely song that some of you may remember from the late mid-'80s, the early mid-'80s.
They were the best of times.
By the Smiths, called Cemetery Gates.
Oh, my.
And one of the lyrics is, Keats and Yeats are on your side.
Mm.
And, of course, Oscar Wilde was on Morrissey's side. He was, and a lot of Morrissey fans, they wear the, what's Oscar Wilde's flower?
A violet,
a violet,
Yeah.
or a lily. I think it's a lily, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that would make more sense.
But anyway, so there's a whole, Keats and Yeats are on your side. And of course, one of the great romantic poets. So, but this did come to my mind because I was thinking of poems. Who should I choose? And I instinctively went looking for poems by Keats and Yeats.
Mm-hmm.
This one is called Fairy Songs. Well, I should say there are two in this set, Fairy Songs by John Keats. Shed no tear, oh shed no tear, the flower will bloom another year. Weep no more, oh weep no more, young buds sleep in the root's white core. Dry your eyes, oh dry your eyes, for I was taught in paradise to ease my breast of melodies. Shed no tear. Overhead, look overhead, 'mong the blossoms white and red, look up, I flutter now on this fresh pomegranate bough. See me, 'tis this silvery bill ever cures the good man's ill. Shed no tear, oh shed no tear, the flower will bloom another year. Adieu, adieu, I fly, adieu, I vanish in the heavens blue. Adieu, adieu. And song number 2. Ah, woe is me, poor silver wing, that I must chant thy lady's dirge, and death to this fair haunt of spring, of melody and streams of flowery verge. Poor silver wing, ah, woe is me, that I must see these blossoms snow upon thy lady's pall. Go, pretty page, and in her ear whisper that the hour is near. Softly tell her not to fear such calm Favonian burial. Go, pretty page, and soothily tell the blossoms hang by a melting spell, and fall they must, ere a star wink thrice upon her closed eyes, that now in vain are weeping their last tears, at sweet life leaving, and these arbors green, rich dowry from spirit of the spheres. Alas, poor queen.
That also felt very Morrissey to me.
It does, doesn't it?
And again, we're celebrating National Poetry Month. And, you know, I'm sure that we all assume that when we were all through grammar school and high school, that we saw posters in our school about National Poetry Month. But guess what? We didn't, because it didn't really begin until 1996. Now, who was in high school in 1996? Wow. Not Peter, you were not in high school in 1996. Your children aren't even in high school yet. You'll be in high school when they're in high school. You'll be dropping them off. But, but didn't you assume that you saw National Poetry Month, that you could just picture the great little, the posters?
Absolutely.
But no, that's just, those posters are issued now. In fact, the Academy of American Poets, they issue a poster each year for National Poetry Month, and it's always free. You have to order it in advance. But if you go to their website, you'll see some of the past posters and a lot of suggestions of what to do for National Poetry Month. And one of the things you can do is read poetry to your friends. Gabriel, do you have another poem you can read for us?
Absolutely. I have one here that's by one of my favorite authors, Rudyard Kipling. He did so much great stuff way back when the world was all about adventure and travel and opening new lands. But this one, interestingly enough, I actually came across in a Star Trek book. I was a big sci-fi nerd for the longest. I still,
yeah, right.
All right.
Well, he was such a nerd.
I write the stuff.
Well, you know what?
Past
He was such a nerd that he read it in a book, not even saw it on TV.
Exactly. So I actually read one of their books, and this actually was one of the poems that was actually included in the book. I was amazed that I'd never heard of it, knowing that I really, really enjoyed Kipling. So I read it and just thought it was the most wonderful thing. It talks about finding the best friend in your life, the people that you know you can trust absolutely and without reservation. And it's called The 1,000th Man by Rudyard Kipling. One man in 1,000, Solomon says, will stick more close than a brother. And it's worthwhile seeking him half your days if you find him before the other. 999 depend on what the world sees in you. But the 1,000th man will stand your friend with the whole round world against you. 'Tis neither promise nor prayer nor show will settle the finding for he. 999 of them go by your looks or your acts or your glory. But if he finds you and you find him, the rest of the world don't matter. For the 1,000th man will sink or swim with you in any water. You can use his purse with no more talk than he uses yours for his spendings, and laugh and meet in your daily walk. as though there had been no lendings. 999 of them call for silver and gold in their dealings. But the 1,000th man, he's worth them all, because you can show him your feelings. Page 2. His wrong's your wrong. His right's your right. In season or out of season. Stand up and back it in all men's sight with that for your only reason. 999 can't bide by the shame or the mocking or laughter. But the 1,000th man will stand by your side to the gallows foot and after.
That
lovely.
is beautiful. And you were made aware of that because of Star Trek, but because of a Star Trek book. Yeah. That's how nerdy Gabriel is, and we're very proud of him.
And by Star Trek.
I had 2 novelizations of a Robotech, so I'm right there with you, sir. That's a cartoon, ladies and gentlemen. A sci-fi cartoon.
It's a adapted version of a Japanese series.
Yes.
Now, Miss Melody, I think did you read everything that you already brought in?
I have one more.
You do?
And it's actually an American poet,
How wonderful.
a contemporary of Mr. Whitman, a lady. I'll give it away now if you haven't guessed it already, ladies and gentlemen, Emily Dickinson.
Hurrah, huzzah.
And I didn't know that we were talking about songs and movies, and it happens to be that there is a movie out right now, a biopic, however they say that, called A Quiet Passion, starring Cynthia Nixon as Emily Dickinson. And I think it was just out this weekend, and it's been very well reviewed.
Well, we better go and get those ticket sales up.
Get them right now. It's probably not even playing in San Diego yet, but when it gets here.
Out here in the hinterlands?
Okay, so this one's called I Know a Place Where Summer Strives. I know a place where summer strives with such a practiced frost. She each year leads her daisies back, recording briefly, lost. But when the south wind stirs the pools and struggles in the lanes, her heart misgives her for her vow, and she pours soft refrains into the lap of adamant and spices and the dew that stiffens quietly to quartz upon her amber shoe.
And again, that's one that you could so easily memorize because each word is the perfect choice. Now, Gabriel, I can't remember if you've read all your poems yet. I know you've got some bonus material for us.
Right. I've actually got a few more poems, but I'm saving them for the next time because we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that there's a great thing that we're doing on the next show in regards to Edgar Allan Poe.
Very good.
My next one was Poe, so
Thank you. We'll save that. So that'll be Poe-tastic. Very good. Now, Miss Melanie, super duper pressure, but I was going to read this George Herbert poem, but then I heard you read it, and you were so much better than me. I dare you to read this church music one.
Okay.
Do you need some time to look at it, or are you just going to sight read it for us?
I'll just go for it.
Because
I'm going to put that lit degree to the test.
I know, and actually, when I read it, you totally recognized it.
Yeah, I did.
And it's a beautiful poem. Church music.
Okay, church music. Sweetest of sweets, I thank you. When displeasure did through my body wound my mind, you took me thence, and in your house of pleasure a dainty lodging me assigned. Now I in your without a body move, rising and falling with your wings. We both together sweetly live in love, yet say sometimes, God help poor kings. Comfort I'll die, for if you post from me, sure I shall do so, and much more. But if I travel in your company, you know the way to heaven's door.
I love that poem. And this, I will display a book, well, lots of books, at this display I'm doing at Geisel Library at UC San Diego for National Poetry Month. And among the books I'll display are the Oxford Book of Short Poems. Because we're trying to encourage people to check out some of the books, literally check them out with their library card, and then waltz over to Perk's coffee shop at the UC San Diego bookstore, to read a poem, and it's probably much easier to read a short one, don't you think? I assume so. And there's so many wonderful short poems in this book, and a lot of other books will be on display, and even the high cubes will be on display for people to quickly write a piece. Now, I think there's time, Gabriel. You have the end of a Kipling story left over from our last episode.
Yes.
And I think it's about 10 minutes of material, as
Yeah.
I recall. I wish you could read that now.
Okay.
And we're all going to hide in the other room and make one last high cube poem when we sign out. So you won't feel bad if we abandon the room, because we don't make too much clicky sounds when we're playing with the high cubes. So the three of us are going to stand up and go to the next room, and we're going to take the high cubes with us to create one last poem for sign-off. But in the meantime, you've got this wonderful, wonderful story that you can finish. Could you remind us what the story is called?
Yeah, this story is, again, by Kipling. It was called, it was from The Jungle Book. What people don't realize is when they go see the Disney movie, The Jungle Book, it tells one story out of the entire volume of work that's in The Jungle Book. And one of the stories that I'm finishing up is a short story called Tumai of the Elephants. And it's fascinating to go ahead and see all of these stories in one place. So you should really, really pick up The Jungle Book. It is so much more than Mowgli's story. Although that's a really fun and amazing story, I think it's definitely one of those untapped riches. But this is part 2. In part 1, we left off where little Tumai had followed his big elephant, Kalanag, to the elephant dancing ground, which is a mystical place that theoretically no man had ever seen before. And he was told that it is something special and something never to be missed. So one night, his large elephant, after the elephant hunting season, is leaving camp by himself, and the little boy goes ahead and climbs up on the elephant, and the elephant takes him to the dancing grounds. And this is part 2 of Tumai of the Elephants. At last, Kalanag stood between the 2 tree trunks at the very top of the hill. They were part of a circle of trees that grew round in an irregular space of some 3 or 4 acres. And in all that space, as little Tumai could see, the ground had been trampled down as hard as a brick floor. Some trees grew in the center of the clearing, but their bark was rubbed away, and the white wood beneath showed all shiny and polished in the patches of moonlight. There were creepers hanging down from the upper branches, and the bells of the flowers of the creepers, great waxy white things like convolvuluses, hung down fast asleep. But within the limits of the clearing, there was not a single blade of green, nothing but the trampled earth. The moonlight showed it all iron grey, except where some elephants had stood upon it, and their shadows were inky black. Little Tumai looked, holding his breath, with his eyes starting out of his head, and as he looked, more and more and more elephants swung out into the open from between the tree trunks. Little Tumai could only count up to 10, and he counted again and again on his fingers, until he lost count of the 10s, and his head began to swim. Outside the clearing, he could hear them crashing in the undergrowth as they worked their way up the hillside. But as soon as they were within the circle of the tree trunks, they moved like ghosts. There were white-tusked wild males with fallen leaves and nuts and twigs lying in the wrinkles of their necks and the folds of their ears. Fat, slow-footed she-elephants with restless little pinky black calves, only 3 or 4 feet high, running under their stomachs. Young elephants with their tusks just beginning to show, and very proud of them, lanky, scraggy, old maid elephants with their hollow, anxious faces and trunks like rough bark. Savage old bull elephants, scarred from shoulder to flank with great wheals and cuts of bygone fights, and the caked dirt of their solitary mud baths dropping from their shoulders. And there was one with a broken tusk, and the marks of the full stroke, the terrible drawing scrape of a tiger's claws in his side. They were standing head to head, or walking to and fro across the ground in couples, or rocking and swaying all by themselves. Scores and scores of elephants. Tumai knew that so long as he lay still on Kalanag's neck, nothing would happen to him. for even in the rush and scramble of the Keddah drive, a wild elephant does not reach up with his trunk and drag a man off the neck of a tame elephant. And these elephants were not thinking of men that night. Once they started and put their ears forward when they heard the chinking of leg iron in the forest. But it was Pudmini, Peterson Sahib's pet elephant. Her chain snapped short off, grunting, snuffling up the hillside. She must have broken her pickets and come straight from Peterson Sahib's camp. And little Tumai saw another elephant, one that he did not know, with deep rope galls on the back of his neck and breast. He, too, must have run away from some camp in the hills about. At last there was no sound of any more elephants moving in the forest, and Kala Nag rolled out from his station between the trees and went into the middle of the crowd, clucking and gurgling, and all the elephants began to talk in their own tongue and to move about. Still lying down, little Tumai looked down upon the scores and scores of broad backs and wagging ears and tossing trunks and little rolling eyes. He heard the click of tusks as they crossed other tusks by accident, and the dry rustle of tusks twined together, and the chafing of enormous sides and shoulders in the crowd, and the incessant flick and hiss of the great tails. Then a cloud came over the moon, and he sat in black darkness. But the quiet, steadily hustling and pushing and gurgling went on just the same. He knew that there were elephants all around Kala Nag, and that there was no chance of backing him out of the assembly. So he set his teeth and shivered. In a Keddah, at least, there was torchlight and shouting. But here he was all alone in the dark, and once a trunk came up and touched him on the knee. Then an elephant trumpeted, and they all took it up for 5 or 10 terrible seconds. The dew from the trees above spattered down like rain on the unseen backs, and a dull booming noise began, not very loud at first, and little Tumai could not tell what it was. But it grew, and Kala Nag lifted up one forefoot, and then the other, and brought them down on the ground, 1, 2, 1, 2, as steadily as triphammers. The elephants were stamping all together now, and it sounded like a war drum beaten at the mouth of a cave. The dew fell from the trees till there was no more left to fall, and the booming went on, and the ground rocked and shivered, and little Tumai put his hands up to his ears to shut out the sound. But it was all one gigantic jar that ran through him, the stamp of hundreds of heavy feet on the raw earth. Once or twice you could feel Kala Nag and the others surge forward in a few strides, and the thumping would change the crushing sound of juicy green things being bruised. But in a minute or two, the boom of feet on hard earth began again. A tree was creaking and groaning somewhere near him. He put out his arm and felt the bark. But Kala Nag moved forward, still tramping, and he could not tell where he was in the clearing. There was no sound from the elephants, except once, when 2 or 3 little calves squeaked together. Then he heard a thump and a shuffle, and the booming went on. It must have lasted fully 2 hours, and little Tumai ached in every nerve. But he knew by the smell of the night air that the dawn was coming. The morning broke in one sheet of pale yellow behind the green hills, and the booming stopped with the first ray, as though the light had been an order. Before little Tumai had got the ringing out of his head, before even he had shifted his position, there was not an elephant in sight except Kala Nag, Pudmini, and the elephant with the rope galls. There was neither sign, nor rustle, nor whisper down the hillsides to show where the others had gone. Little Tumai stared again and again. The clearing, as he remembered it, had grown in the night. More trees stood in the middle of it, but the undergrowth and the jungle grass at the sides had been rolled back. Little Tumai stared once more. Now he understood the trampling. The elephants had stamped out more room, had stamped the thick grass and juicy cane to trash, the trash into slivers, and the slivers into tiny fibers, and the fibers into hard earth. "Wah!" said little Tumai. His eyes were very heavy. "Kala Nag, my lord, let us keep by Pudmini and go to Peterson Sahib's camp, or I shall drop from my neck." The third elephant watched the two go away, snorted, wheeled round, and took his own path. He may have belonged to some little native king's establishment, 50 or 60 or 100 miles away. 2 hours later, as Peterson Sahib was eating early breakfast, his elephants, who had been double-chained that night, began to trumpet, and Pudmini, mired to the shoulders, with Kala Nag, very footsore, shambled into the camp. Little Tumai's face was grey and pinched, and his hair was full of leaves and drenched with dew. But he tried to salute Peterson Sahib and cried faintly, "The dance! The elephant dance! I have seen it, and I die." As Kala Nag sat down, he slid off his neck in a dead faint. But since native children have no nerves worth speaking of, in 2 hours he was lying very contentedly in Peterson Sahib's hammock, with Peterson Sahib's shooting coat under his head and a glass of warm milk, a little brandy with a dash of quinine inside of him, and while the old hairy scarred hunters of the jungle sat 3 deep before him, looking at him as though he was a spirit, he told his tale in short words, as a child will, and wound up with, "Now if I lie in one word, send men to see, and they will find the elephant folk have trampled down more room in that dance room. And they will find 10 and 10 and many times 10 tracks leading to that dance room. They also have made more room with their feet. I have seen it. Kala Nag took me, and I saw. Also, Kala Nag is very leg-weary." Little Tumai lay back and slept all through the long afternoon and into the twilight. And while he slept, Peterson Sahib and Machua Appa followed the track of the 2 elephants for 15 miles across the hills. Peterson Sahib had spent 18 years in catching elephants, and he had only once before found such a dance place. Machua Appa had no need to look twice at the clearing to see what had been done there, or to scratch with his toe in the packed, rammed earth. "The child speaks the truth," said he. "All this was done last night, and I have counted 70 tracks crossing the river. See, Sahib, where Pudmini's leg iron cut the bark of that tree. Yes, she was here too." They looked at each other, and up and down, and they wondered, for the ways of elephants are beyond the wit of any man, black or white, to fathom. 40 years and 5, said Machua Appa, have I followed my lord the elephant. But never have I heard that any child of man has seen what this child has seen. By all the gods of the hills, it is... What can we say? And he shook his head. When they got back to camp, it was time for the evening meal. Peterson Sahib ate alone in his tent, but he gave orders that the camp should have 2 sheep and some fowls, as well as a double ration of flour and salt and rice, for he knew there would be a feast. Big Tumai had come up hotfoot from the camp in the plains in search for his son and his elephant, and now that he had found them, he looked at them as if they were afraid of them both. And there was a feast by the blazing campfires in front of the lines of picketed elephants, and little Tumai was the hero of it all. And the big brown elephant catchers, the trackers and drivers and ropers, and the men who know all the secrets of breaking the wildest elephants, passed him from one to the other, and they marked his forehead with blood from the breast of a newly killed jungle cock to show that he was a forester, initiated and free of all the jungles. And at last, when the flames died down, and the red light of the logs made the elephants look as though they had been dipped in blood too, Machua Appa, the head of all the drivers of all the Kedas, Machua Appa, Peterson Sahib's other self, who had never seen a made road in 40 years. Machua Appa, who was so great he had no other name than Machua Appa, leaped to his feet with little Tumai held high in the air above his head and shouted, "Listen, my brothers! Listen too, you, my lords, in the lines there. For I, Machua Appa, am speaking. This little one shall no more be called Little Tumai, but Tumai of the elephants, as his great-grandfather was called before him. What never man has seen, he has seen throughout the long night. And the favor of the elephant folk and of the gods of the jungles is with him. He shall become a great tracker. He shall become greater than I, even I, Machua Appa. He shall follow the new trail and the stale trail and the mixed trail with a clear eye. He shall take no harm in the Keda when he runs under their bellies to rope at the wild tuskers. And if he slips before the feet of the charging bull elephant, that bull elephant shall know who he is and shall not crush him." And at last a wild yell, the crashing trumpet peal that only the Viceroy of India hears, the Salamat of the Keda. But it was for the sake of little Tumai, who had seen that never man had seen before, the dance of the elephants at night in the heart of the Garo Hills.
Brilliantly timed, and we're out of time. Thank you for joining us again at Ether Tale Radio Theatre. Good night, everybody. Good night. I think soon I'll hear music in the air.
There it
Perhaps
is.
right around now. And that same chicken is still in the studio, and the lion left over from that last Wizard of Oz radio drama presentation. The lion, the chicken,
and the wardrobe.
The lion, the chicken, and the wardrobe. Our take, our mashup of young adult literature. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
Good night.
Your search for the right office furniture will be done when you walk into Shore for sure. In our 46,000 square foot warehouse, you are sure to find the right new or used desk and chair for your home and office. Trusted for over 40 years, Shore is proven to provide great value, quality, and service. From free space planning to our white glove delivery service, you are sure to leave happy and satisfied. We're a family-owned business that will treat you like family for sure. Se habla español.
A podcast or radio show on WS Radio is a great way to create content marketing. Turn prospects into customers into raving fans. Contact Wade at WSRadio.com or call 866-WS-RADIO. Education, industry experts, back to the basics. Is your company using the Internet of Things to its fullest potential? Enlist the Peggy Smedley Institute and its team of experts to create a customized plan for how to apply the IoT to your specific needs. Learn everything you need to know to achieve tangible business outcomes in today's digital economy. Contact us at 630-933-0844. That's 630-933-0844 or visit learnitit.com.
I have some good news for a change. With the stressful times upon us, having a regular glass of wine has proved in many studies to reduce stress. Want some more stress-relieving tips? VinVillage.com is an exciting new social organization connecting wine lovers around the country with an exclusive local and online wine lifestyle experience. Vin Village members can meet others online and in person, attend wine dinners and tastings, participate in forums, blogs, and wikis, purchase limited and exclusive wines, even create your own wine. You heard me. Create your own wine. And best yet, membership is free. So reduce some of the stress and have some fun. Join now and connect with thousands of other like-minded wine lovers. To learn more, go to vinvillage.com. That's www.vinvillage.com. Vin Village is where wine lovers connect.
Hi, this is Rob Barnett, vinvillage.com, where wine lovers connect. Be sure to tune in weekly to Vin Village Radio for exclusive, in-depth interviews with the who's who in wine and food.
You take your smartphone almost everywhere you go. Now WSRadio.com can be there too. Search WS Radio in the Play Store for your Android devices or iTunes for Apple and download the WS Radio application. WSRadio.com on your phone and in your ear everywhere you go. Download the WS Radio application. Do it now. It's very easy. WSRadio.com.